Oh, you are too? Okay, I didn't understand that.
At the end, for the Q&A, someone has to give one microphone for the audience.
Easy.
To the stream. And speak louder on the chin. It will be great. Awesome. Okay.
Nice. Cool. Hey everyone, I'm James.
I'm James.
Nice. So this is going to be a little less technical than how IPC on Cosmos works, but obviously both sides of this are super valuable. So we're going to be talking about sort of meta-cartel and building these new digital communities from a couple of different angles. So press the clicker a million times. I'm James Waugh. I'm a member of James Dow, which makes sense. Also one of the core contributors of meta-cartel, and also playing a pretty key role in meta-cartel ventures, and then also founded Axia Labs. Axia Labs a few years ago, and we really focus on sort of token design and governance design. We work with a bunch of token projects here, as well as some more sort of formal enterprise people.
And I'm James Duncan. I am also part of the James Dow, one of the founding members from the ETH Boston about a year, or no, a couple months ago, more. Also part of the meta-cartel, founding members there. It's been really focused on the legal design of the Venture DAO, and I was formerly a part of the EF Grants team. That's kind of how I came into the ecosystem and where I got a lot of the knowledge for what is going on in Ethereum today. At the moment, I'm building a bridge. It's a company focused on user experience and creating usable interfaces for people like my mom to come into crypto and understand it and interact with it, and it to provide value for her easily. So,
nice. So we're going to sort of split this into two parts. The first of it is like giving a little bit of context on meta-cartel, and then James will deep dive into sort of how we can get more than like the 50 people in the room. How do we scale this into a wider community? So first of all, hands up if you have heard of meta-cartel before. Okay, it's like 50%, like 30, 40%. So basically what meta-cartel is a grant-giving DAO, right? So we give out money to cool projects. That's the one pitch. But what it started as was basically a Telegram group focused around meta-transactions, right? So meta-transactions is basically the ability to send around Ethereum or other tokens in a way that is just less painful. And then that was sort of solved last year by the gas station network. But then there was still a bunch of people in a Telegram group that were interested in hanging out, right? And so that's sort of how the meta-cartel was first started. And it spun up a bunch of interesting projects from there. So we have about 1,000 ETH in the DAO, and we give out grants to a bunch of different people and a bunch of different projects, mainly going to sort of hackathons and events like this and sort of finding the most like pure talent that we can. So one of the really big things is that we're a lot more meta than we are cartel. We haven't been rolling around in, like scary looking SUVs with AK-47s. We haven't got to that stage yet. But what we have been doing is been pretty meta, right? Which is like using the most effective tactic available. And we've been pushing really hard down that route. Whether it's the Gitcoin CLR matching, so we collected 25% of the most recent CLR matching just by sort of having a community and pushing each other to sort of get involved and help it out. All of your base belongs to us, especially if it's a DAO. So we have sort of all of the communities, or at least a lot of the communities. These are all a bunch of cool logos of a bunch of different working groups. There's hundreds of Telegram groups and tens of calls per week. Just to go through a few of them, sort of MetaClan is this idea of being able to have a guild of guilds for a bunch of different crypto games. MetaFactory is an amazing project that just had an announcement on Monday, which is basically combining real life fashion, so like a jacket or a cool like bum bag, I guess you call it, yeah. But a bunch of different cool like physical fashion, and then also like NFTs, which also have like DAI backing the NFT. A bunch of cool stuff. You can find it online. Metagame is sort of the combination of real life and how the decentralized world are going to intersect. Raid Guild I'll talk about a little bit more in a second, but it's sort of this decentralized collective that can provide services. Rocket NFT, maybe you heard Alex talking yesterday, is a really interesting way that you provide loans against NFTs. DAO House is an amazing platform to interact with these DAOs. Meta-cartel Ventures I'll talk about a little bit. Marketing DAO, another really good initiative to push forward Ethereum. And then of course Meta-cartel itself, plus a bunch more. Really what we're doing is trying to incubate these cool ideas and incubate these cool people into pushing forward down whatever path they think makes most sense. So we have sort of all these different communities, and then we have this sort of wider universe, right, of all the different Metacartel projects. And really, like, everything that you see here has been started in the course of like 8 months, right? It really has not been a long time that these communities have like all pushed together. There was Telegram groups before that, but going from 0 to 100 has really been a short time. And even these stats here, this is probably like 2 months old, a little bit more than 2 months old, and these stats are already outdated, right? There's probably almost double as many community members. There's like 30% more DAO members. We've deployed probably almost 100 grand now worth of capital to a bunch of different grantees. Really, we are pushing forward at the maximum speed possible. And you can sort of see around the universe, these are the people that we've given money to, and not just given money to, right, but also given signal to, giving dog food. We've dog fooded almost everything we give a grant to. So, getting a grant from Metacartel is one thing, but getting 70 people show up to your door to use your DApp or use your protocol, it has been hugely useful for a bunch of these projects. So the path to sustainable DAOs. So, it's all good and well having a nice universe, but if we're just giving away money, how do we sort of build sustainability into this? So really, the sort of process here is that we can give these grants, then we can provide these services, then we can make these investments in a way that isn't shitty, right? The idea of Metacartel is to be focused around pushing forward dApps on top of Ethereum, and anything else that comes out of Metacartel has that sort of embedded in it as an ethos. And that's been super successful so far. So these DAO service providers, what are they? How do they work? There's Raid Guild, which is this sort of collective of a bunch of different cool people that are all trying to push forward projects as a collective and provide, front-end, back-end, accounting, game theory all together. Axia Labs, woo, it's me and Callum and a few other cool people, and we do a lot of cool token design stuff. Abridged, James will give an excellent explanation of, but it's doing really cool Dow Ops stuff and sort of onboarding this next wave of people into DAOs. Odyssey do a lot of front-end, back-end development, and then Open Law is sort of connecting these DAOs to a legal structure. And we're all sort of trying to provide services for this next wave of DAO magic that is entering the space. Money versus signal. This is another really big part of the sustainability piece, is that, traditionally the way it's worked in crypto is that you show up and you say, hi, I have a project and I will go to the coolest, biggest logo VC that I can, and I'll sell my soul to the VC, and then I'll get to put their logo on my website, and then all the other VCs will FOMO in and be like, oh yes, there's cool logos on the website, how do I buy it? That's okay, right? But maybe it's not that scalable. And maybe if we can sort of actually, invest in things for the right reasons and push companies forward in the right reasons, when we're providing services, hey, we're not going to charge you $50 million to make your logo. Hey, when we're making an investment, we're not going to take 98% of your token supply for, giving you $5,000. How do we build these more like ethical, I guess, or like, sustainable models into the whole process, from sort of giving grants to doing services to providing, investment. Not just boring money people, actually doing the experiments. That's hopefully what we're doing. So really what this is there's a bunch of cool projects, there's a bunch of cool initiatives, working groups, Telegram groups of people that actually just care about, what the Ethereum ecosystem and what the wider blockchain ecosystem are doing. We always are at hackathons giving out grants. Hopefully you've seen a bunch of us around. Really what we're doing is sort of trying to move Ethereum from interesting, experiment to like, how do we push these experiments to the next stage and make them into a reality? So this is sort of like one, solar system of Ethereum, if you think about it. And really what James will touch on and what we're looking to do next is how do we go from one solar system to like building it into this massive wider universe and sort of opening it up to like the normal humans that like aren't attending EthCC and don't speak like deep Ethereum. And that's sort of the next step of this. So with that, I will give you to the other James.
Thank you, James. Right, as James just described, we're moving toward, at Abridged, we're focused on a user interface that anyone can use, right? That isn't just useful for people who have downloaded MetaMask. And so where do we build the next social interface? Another piece of this, too, just to put into context, is that DAOs, there's a range of DAOs, right? There's a more permissionless open DAO, which is like Ethereum or Uniswap, for instance. And then there is what we're doing here, which is really coordinating humans and creating democratic systems to make decisions about resources. And so in order to sort of build the next social network, which is what this sort of type of DAO structure looks like for crypto, is you need users and you need communities that already exist that are incentivized and interested in pulling together resources and committing that resource to a specific cause and promote a specific initiative. And this will be a little bit more focused on sort of what it takes technically to bring adoption, what kind of design patterns we have come up with and found that are most effective. But essentially, you need a good UX and you need distribution to create adoption. I've made a necessary and sufficient clause here for the more technically inclined to make that a little more approachable. But the first 5 minutes of UX, the first 5 minutes, the user needs to feel comfortable and trustworthy, needs to feel comfort and trust within the application, right? If they don't feel this, they are going to leave and they will probably never come back. Again, comfort and trust, it comes as a sort of like factor for great UX. In order to create comfort, we can't make the user think. We need to make it mobile first, and there can't be any downloads. Mobile first development, there's actually a stat that more people have an internet connection to their phone than they do have clean drinking water in the world. And so that's like one small piece of the power of what like mobile development, mobile access really provides, right? It's a small anecdote. And then trustworthiness, in order to have trustworthiness, you have to first satisfy these comfort factors. And the trustworthiness comes from providing value prior to asking for anything from the end user, and also creating this easy to understand interface and use case so they don't have to think again about exactly what they're doing with crypto. In order to do this, there's this concept of incremental decentralization, where you can make trade-offs and create a hybrid system for someone who is coming into the ecosystem. They're using an app for the first time. Maybe it's just there's $5 at risk, but you create a low-risk environment that might be hosted potentially, and then incrementally decentralize into a place where they're fully non-custodial, and they're interacting with maybe a Uniswap or creating some more of these like DeFi, sophisticated DeFi principles. And in order to create this sort of experience, you need an account contract that's mobily accessible, that's using meta transactions to talk to the blockchain, and using a layer 2 solution to create an easy interface and UX. And this is kind of the architecture that has been built with the abridged V2 contracts. So this is kind of what the system looks like on the back end in a visual representation of that. After you have this user interface and this user design and this like application that's easy to use, you need effective distribution. Without effective distribution, we've just been building things in a silo, and that's really what a lot of our projects sort of do is create ideas and this kind of cathedral in a desert. And without distribution, you need there will be no people that come, right? And this is also sort of a piece that we don't want to emulate. We can't really talk about blockchain, right? Because often, if we do, we kind of end up looking like Charlie here, right? Which isn't ideal to create users. And to put into context, typically, incumbents this is like the strength of network effects, right? So political incumbents have 98% chance of winning generally, according to Google. I just kind of like Googled this when making the presentation to kind of understand quickly how strong incumbent network effects are. With crypto, we have 0.1% of the Facebook population, right? So if you think of social networks within crypto, we are even less inclined to encourage people from incumbent platforms to kind of join this sort of crypto movement, right? And so we need to build where people exist. This is kind of the idea. And in order to do so, we're starting at a bridge to build in crypto functionality into social interfaces, right? So this is where people and communities exist today online, is in Facebook chat rooms. They're excited about memes or global warming or whatever cause that they're interested in, whatever game, etc. And if we bring this kind of functionality and this value to those communities in interfaces that they already exist in, we don't have to change their habits. They're just using a new tool within that community. And again, we want that messaging to not look like Charlie, in the previous slide. So that means no blockchain, low risk use case, and again, we need existing communities. So we need to give these communities tools that will empower them to accomplish their goals. And that, to me, kind of looks like DAOs to some extent. I think DAOs could be the lowest threshold for someone entering the space, as long as they don't have to really conceptually understand what's going on there. And I can dig into that in just a second. But essentially, so here's some progress that we have today. We have permission communities, like I described before, which are what the Metacartel is doing. It's more that social interface. And then we have the permissionless communities, which are like these open networks that have incentive mechanisms to have people participate in a more autonomous way. There's about 300 people in the Metacartel, and about, again, in these permissionless communities, like less than a percent of the broader Facebook population, right? But they're extremely active. And so that's encouraging, right? Whenever you have a community, you might have a population, but that population is extremely active. So we've had almost 500 proposals since the beginning of the Moloch DAO, which started just about a year ago today. And within Ethereum, I don't know if you've seen this chart, but this is a chart from the State of Crypto report by IDEO in a collaboration of other institutions within our industry. But Ethereum is extremely active as far as its developer commitment and how much time developers commit to its ecosystem, which I think is also extremely encouraging. At the same time, there's not a lot of growth here, especially in this bear market, due to information, and there's also like difficulties. So within DAOs that we're involved with, or like the Metacartel, there's information asymmetry due to the different time zones. And a lot of people might like miss information because there's a Zoom call at 2 a.m. their time, but they didn't get it on in real time at their hour. Maybe they're across the world. And with Ethereum, despite it being an open network, it's still a difficult on-ramp conceptually, right? And people like EthHub are really like accomplishing or solving that issue, but it's still, there's a lot of like economic and technical leaps that you have to make mentally in order to understand what it means to really join and participate in Ethereum. Today, what we're doing at Abridged is we're starting to integrate these systems into social interfaces. So we have the Signal DAO, which we launched recently, has more than 100 members, and
people are using it.
People are using it. It's huge, right? We've seen that it increases participation by 10x of what Moloch typical participation rates look like. And we're calling this Dow Ops, where we're integrating Web 2 APIs with Web 3 functionality, and we're kind of providing this little middle layer interface for that. And I can dig into that more later if you want to find me after this. But again, back to that question of why I think DAOs might be the lowest threshold for someone to enter the ecosystem. What if we had 1 million members in a DAO, and they all contributed $5 at a time? So that's like possible. You could ask 1 million people to contribute $5 to a specific cause that they're interested in. And if you don't necessarily call it a DAO, they don't even have to know it's a DAO. They don't even have to know it's blockchain in the back end. It could just be using Wire, and they use Apple Pay. And then they have that much money to kind of contribute to the cause that they're most excited about. Communities that we have been working with today that are interested in potentially doing this or democratizing their governance structures are ones like the Dank memes, which we've been working very closely with. There are about 150 million people online within this network who are collaborating around memes, and we just onboarded about 17,000 initial token holders this past weekend. But another group that I'm really interested in and excited about is like a global coalition. They're building structures to then reinvigorate coral reefs, and this could be a great candidate for that $5 DAO idea, where you have 1 million people contributing $5 to then support the like something that is benefiting, like a blockchain for social good project, right? That actually has some teeth. Anyway, that is our presentation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think like super great to give a little bit of context on sort of how we can expand the DAOs and also sort of where they're at today. But like the thing is get involved, right? No one has been paid for a lot of the efforts inside of these DAOs. We're doing it because it makes sense, right? Because we sort of see this wider picture. And so scan the QR code, go to metacartel.org, see how you can get involved. There is a bunch of different efforts going on and a bunch of like actually doing things for the right reason, right? Raising $1 million for a token is great, but actually doing things for a community and to get specific outcomes is probably better. So yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're running out of time, so I can take 1 or 2 questions. So is there any question? Yeah?
Thank you for the talk. Can you explain a bit more about the Coral DAO? That sounded amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is just an idea right now, but it's this group called the Global Coalition. They've like just kind of started forming, and they're actually building these concrete structures. They're an art collective that's building concrete structures to then create coral reefs, and they're sinking them in certain areas that they have already like coral growing on them, which will then reinvigorate the environment in the bottom of the ocean. And I think like an early iteration of this would be doing something more simple than maybe a DAO, and you just spin up an RDAI, sort of like what they're doing with the high priests, either an RDAI or a chai, some interest-bearing mechanism. And that way you can get people to then contribute $5. If you get 1 million people to contribute $5, it's I think it's $6,000 a month or so at 8% interest that they can then contribute to that, operations of that organization, which I think would be a really powerful narrative, both for crypto as well as for coral restoration.
I love it. I really love it. Thank you. What's the easiest way to join that?
Contact me. I can.
All right,
put you
I
in
will.
touch.
Yeah. Another question?
Can you expand on mid-capital ventures? Like, have you invested in companies right now?
Yeah, so basically what we've done in the past 3 months is we've been working alongside CoinList. We've been doing the KYC and accreditation through there. We have now 40 crypto founders that have all committed to put in some amount of capital. And again, putting $1 billion into a fund and then investing is not the point here, right? Putting a small amount of money with a high amount of signal behind it, this is the point. And if we can sort of have this collection of money where we can make these small strategic bets, that's one thing. But on top of that, we can also signal behind them. We can have all these different founders, have all these different projects, really like investing in things for the right reason and being able to turn 0 into a 1 for all these projects along the way. We really don't want it to fail, so we're going to do it. A shitload of work will go into every single project we invest in, which means that there's a lot of projects that are keen to get involved.
Thanks.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.